Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. My name is Shelby, and if you are new here, thanks so much for clicking on today's video, and thank you for being here. Now, if you couldn't already tell by the title of the video, this is going to be a video having a realistic week while being in a reading slump, trying to see how many books I can read in the week. Now, in hindsight, thinking about that, trying to see how many books I can read in a week while still working and doing all my normal everyday tasks and not necessarily prioritizing reading and being in a reading slump, that's crazy. And I should say, it's not that I wasn't prioritizing reading, it was just I was in a reading slump and I didn't realize that I was actually in a reading slump until I started filming this video. You're gonna see throughout the course of this video the books that I picked up and how many I actually read. I'm going to be really honest. This was very, very hard for me. I don't think I realized that I was in a reading slump until like the second to last book that I read. And I just kept thinking, why am I struggling so hard to pick up these books? Why am I not feeling pulled to pick up these books? And I don't think it was necessarily the books that I was reading, but I just wasn't reading the right books that I needed at the time, if that makes sense. Like, I really needed a book that was going to pull me out and make me want to read versus feeling like I was reading for a chore. So, we'll start off with me showing you the first book that I actually picked up. I don't really even remember how much of that I filmed. So just in case I did not explain this, I ended up picking up a book off of my Kindle. I have Kindle Unlimited, and I figured I would check out what was there, see what was free, to just kind of start reading for the week. And I ended up picking up, let me get out of this. I ended up picking up Variation by Rebecca Yarros. And if you guys don't know this, Rebecca Yarros is pretty popular at this point. She is the author of the Fourth Wing series and Onyx Storm. I think that just came out. I haven't picked it up yet, so we will see. And maybe I should actually pick that up, because if you did not know this, Fourth Wing was actually a book that got me out of a reading slump. Was it last year or the year before that? I think it was the year before that. Literally, like at the end of the year, I think 2023, I fell into a reading slump, and then I ended up just picking this book up because I kept hearing so much talk about it. And then thankfully, right after that, Iron Flame came out, so I was able to jump back into it. So maybe I should pick up Onyx Storm, but I'm also like a little iffy and like icked out by it because I didn't really like how the second book went. But we'll see. If you guys have read Onyx Storm, you let me know your thoughts, and I'll see about reading it soon. But yeah, so I ended up picking up Variation, and I had no real understanding about what this book was about. To be honest, I kept seeing it everywhere, and I think it's just because it's Rebecca Yarros. And I figured, okay, well, it's on here, it's free, so let me check it out and see how I feel about it. I'm going to insert the clips of me starting the book, and then we'll come back and chat about it. Good morning, friends. It is, what is today? It's Tuesday. It is my day off, and I figured I would start off by reading because I am trying to see how many books I can actually read in a week. So I'm going to start off with reading Variation by Rebecca Yarros, who is the author of the Fourth Wing series. I don't know anything about this book, so I have no idea what to expect. So we're going to find out. Now, before we discuss my thoughts and feelings on this book, I do need to take a sip of my coffee because it's been a long day. I was at work all day, and it is January 20th, So that meant it was Inauguration Day, and it also meant that it was MLK Day, and that meant nobody was at work, and I was very busy. So I just need a minute to decompress, and also a minute before I dive into talking about this book. Like I said, I did not know anything about this book before actually picking it up. I just picked it up off of a whim, and I'm trying this thing this year where I just don't read synopsis of books, at least to the best of my ability, because I just really want to go into the books without having any prior knowledge of anything that's going to happen, because I do feel like sometimes when you read a synopsis of a book, they give a little bit too much away. So I just wanted to go into this like without knowing really anything. And I don't know if that was the best thing for me. Because for me, my first like introduction, so for me, my initial introduction to Rebecca Yarros was a fantasy. And this is obviously, well, I shouldn't say obviously because you may not know, but this is not a fantasy book. It is a romance, and I don't know if they categorize this as second chance romance or friends to lovers. I'm not really sure how they categorize this, or it might be both tropes mixed into one. I would say it's kind of both tropes, but more so leading on the second chance romance. And I'm going to be honest, the first chapter, I read it and was like, I have no idea what's going on. I was really, really confused and not understanding. And it did this thing where it started off in the past and then it went to present day. And then they have, it alternates like perspectives. So you get the male main character and then the female main character. I don't know. To be honest, it just felt really flat. It felt kind of boring to me. I think I got 44% through the book and I was like, yeah, I have no interest to continue to pick up this book. And I'm trying to be better at basically when I get to that point of being like, cool, we just have to DNF it. DNFing a book is really, really hard. But I'm going to break that. That's not going to be something that I'm going to struggle with anymore. I refuse, because there's just no point in reading a book that you're not enjoying. So I put that one down. I have no idea what happened to it. I only got 44% the way through the book. And to be honest, I don't think I really even care what happens in that book. But I also wonder if I have this initial response to it because I was in a reading slump and I just didn't register that I was in a reading slump at that time. So then, after picking that book up and putting it down, I decided to pick up 1984 by George Orwell. And that one was actually a pick from Anthony when he picked out the books that he wanted me to read for the month. And to be honest, I have not done well with that list at all. I think I've read 2 books that were on that list. And I have 2 more to go. And we're already on the 20th. I feel like I should be pretty much almost done with that list. I'm struggling because I just don't really care about reading books right now because I just haven't found something that makes me interested. Anyways, I ended up picking up 1984 and was really excited to read this one because it was something that I never would have probably picked out for myself, but when Anthony bought it and he thought maybe it'd be something I would be interested in reading, I kind of played around with the idea of picking it up last year, and then I didn't, and then I thought, okay, this is probably going to be the year I pick it up, and this is probably going to be like the year of classics for me. I think I'm going to lean a little bit more into picking up some classic books, so we'll see how that goes. But if you are interested in seeing like a reading vlog where I read some classics, let me know down below in the comments and we can see about getting that video out. But I ended up finally picking it up because he was like, hey, this is going to be one of your books. And yeah, I'm going to go ahead and insert the clips of when I started reading that and let you know my thoughts on it. But I do think in hindsight, had I been not in a reading slump, I probably would have enjoyed this book a lot more. But there was also just some elements to that book that I just don't think, no matter where my mindset is at, I don't think I would enjoy some of those elements regardless. So, anyways, let me insert those clips. Just finished 1984 by George Orwell. So first book out of the week to complete, and I have a few thoughts about this book. But first, my overall rating, I think I'm going to give this a 3 stars. Very good book, and it is such a powerful book. There are so many things that's told within this story that I think hold such significance to the time that we are in right now, and it's scary to think about that. But overall, the reason why this wasn't like a 4 or a 5-star read for me is just because it was very hard for me to want to pick up this book. And I think one of the biggest reasons as to why it was hard for me to pick up the book was just some of the details that went into the story was just a lot for me to take in. It was very, very detailed. There were definitely some things that felt very graphic, and it felt also, for me, I didn't care about our main character. He wasn't necessarily very likable. He had a lot of, we get to see in his head a lot and like hear his thoughts, and his thoughts a lot of the times were like really sickening and gruesome and crude, and I just couldn't get with that. But also with saying that, I think that is such an important and huge piece of the story, because that also propels the story along and kind of helps to build and showcase what the themes are in this book. So ultimately, I thought this was a good book. I do think it's worth reading once. Don't know if I'll read it again. Maybe sometime down the road I might reread it again just to see if I feel a little bit, and see if there's anything else that I can get from this. But I do think this was overall a very good book. Just thinking about when this book was made, it was made in 1949, I believe, and the fact that George Orwell could take something like this and make a story is it's so interesting to me because of how much I feel like it relates to mankind in general. And then the final book that I actually ended up reading, and well, I guess not the final book, because technically today would be the full week mark. So I'll tell you the book that I'm currently reading now, but just to kind of wrap up the books that I did read during the week would be, so then the last book that like I officially read and finished was Same Time Next Year, and this is by Tessa Bailey. I've never read a Tessa Bailey book, but I've seen quite a few of her books around, and I didn't really know anything about this book, but I remember hearing about it and seeing it kind of floating around. I think the first time I saw it was on Goodreads, and I was like, oh, it's like a New Year's read, so let me just pick that up and give it a try. And that's also one reason why it kind of like propelled me to read it this month. It's a new year, fresh start, so I figured why not read something that kind of has some semblance around like the new year. So Yeah, I ended up picking it up, and I also thought, well, it's a shorter read. And this, at this point, I had realized and registered that I was in a reading slump. And one of like my biggest things that I will go to when I'm in a reading slump is to find like short, quick, easy reads to see if it'll help pull me out and kind of be like a refresher or like a palate cleanser to kind of like get me back into the reading mindset. I'm gonna be honest, that did not work with this book. But I'll insert those clips so you guys can see that, and then we'll come back and talk about my thoughts. So ultimately, my thoughts on this book was it wasn't really a book for me. And I don't know if like all of Tessa Bailey's books are like this. So if you have read any of her books, you'll have to let me know in the comments down below if this is like something to expect from her writing. But it was really, really not what I was expecting per se. And it was also really heavy on the spice. When I say like heavy on the spice, I mean it was heavy on the spice to the point where it felt very graphic. Like I felt super uncomfortable reading that book. So I'm glad that it's done. Yeah, that was like a lot. I don't think I've read, and don't quote me on this, but like I don't think I've read a book that felt so heavy and graphic on the spice the way that this one was. It was like uncomfortable. So, needless to say, I did not necessarily enjoy that book. It's a short, easy read though. So spice is your thing. Maybe you'll like this book, but it's definitely not something that I think needs to be, like that shouldn't be the story. If it's something that maybe propels the book along, fine, whatever. But like, honestly, it wasn't needed. And I don't know what I was expecting from the book, but it just wasn't it. It just wasn't it. So I did not give my ratings on any of these books. I can't really rate Variation because I didn't finish it, so I don't really have a rating for that. For George Orwell's 1984, I think I gave that one a 3 stars, which makes me really sad to say that. It wasn't. It is a really, it's like, see, that's the thing. It's a really good book, and it felt so real. Like, I feel like that is something I can definitely see happening. I feel like that's not far off. But the graphicness of the descriptions and things were just, it was a lot for me. And that made it really hard. And also, like, main character, I just didn't connect with him. He wasn't very likable to me, and I don't know if he's meant to be likable or not. I think he's really just meant to show the human side of things and how people are and can be, but I just couldn't get with it. I couldn't get with it. But that one I ended up, like I said, giving it 3 stars. And then the same time, what is it? Yeah, Same Time Next Year by Tessa Bailey, I ended up giving that one a 2 star because I just couldn't get with it. Like, pretty much once you get to, like, I don't even know if you get to the halfway point, but there are definitely, like, I think there's 2 scenes in there, and those 2 scenes were just enough to be like, whoa, because this book is not long. You can read this book probably in an hour or an hour and a half. Like, you can read it in one sitting. It was too much. But to wrap this video up, I am reading a new book now, currently. And this one I'm actually going to listen to as an audiobook. So if you're also watching this video because you're hoping to get some tips for when you're in a reading slump, I think I made a whole video on this, but a couple of things that I go to when it comes to getting myself out of a reading slump. One is I will read or reread, I should say, a book that I know that I loved. That is one way to really get me out of a reading slump. So that might have to be the next thing that I do. But another thing that I do is I will read some short stories. So like novellas, anything like that. I'll just try to find some short stories that I think are appealing to me and see how that goes. And then if that doesn't work, I also lean towards audiobooks, because if I'm having a hard time physically wanting to pick up the book and read it, at least with an audiobook, I can get up, I can do other things, and I can still listen to it and feel like I'm not stuck looking at words on a page that just either are not clicking or making sense, or I'm just not getting anything from it. And so that is what I'm doing currently. So this next book, or this book that I'm currently reading, is an audiobook. And it was actually one of the books that was on my list for my top 10 most anticipated books of 2025. And that is Witchcraft for Wayward Girls by Grady Hendrix. And I'm not very far into it. I literally just started it this morning, so I've only gotten like 8 minutes into the audiobook. But I plan to read more of it tonight, or listen to more of it tonight. This is definitely something that I'm hoping is going to go well, because I was very, very excited for this book. And I really want to be able to give this a high rating. And it seems like it's something that's quite popular. I don't know too much about this author, so you'll have to tell me whether or not you've read any of his books and what your thoughts are on his books. But I've seen some of his other books around. I think there's like one that's got like peaches on it. I think it's about vampires or something like that in the title. So that would be nice to find a new author that I can pick up and get myself out of a reading slump. Because if this ends up pulling me out of a reading slump, then I know I have more books of his that I can turn to continue on a good path and complete my goal of reading 60 books this year, because that should be easy. I read 78 books last year. Right now, I don't feel hopeful. I need to slow down because it's only the beginning of the year. But anyways, guys, let me know whether or not you enjoyed today's video. Give me a comment down below. Let me know what videos you would like to see me do next. And also, let me know what kind of shorts you guys want to see, because I think I'm at a point where I did a lot of shorts. Like, I was posting shorts every single day for the longest time, and the momentum for them for me just kind of, I started to dwindle a little bit. I think it started becoming something that was feeling more like a chore than it was fun, and I want this to be something that remains fun. So if you guys let me know what kind of shorts you would like to see, that would be really, really helpful. But I am going to sign off. I hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and I will see you in the next video. Take care, friends. Happy reading. Bye.